Michael Bosserque, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council and former spokesperson for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. He's also the creator of the World Briefing newsletter on Substack, and he joins us live from Rome. Good to see you again. Thanks so much for speaking with us here. So, President Trump has said Putin won't be messing around with him, but when you and I have spoken before, you've said that President Putin is really adept at playing President Trump. Is that what you're expecting here?
Good to be with you, Kim. Yeah, absolutely. I think he's already played Mr. Trump. I mean, look at the huge diplomatic win he's achieved by being lifted out of the grave of diplomatic isolation and coming to U.S. soil, to a U.S. Air Force base, no less, to meet the leader, so-called leader of the democratic world. I think the only way Putin could have topped that is by getting Trump to come to Moscow. Now, judging by statements so far from both leaders, Putin will be sticking to his maximalist demands, as your correspondent Ben Wiedemann said. I mean, these are a lot of things that Ukraine can never accept, and a lot of Ukrainian politicians have been saying the same thing. So we're not exactly sure where things will go, but I think all of us noticed, too, that the White House has been very much tamping down expectations, calling this a fact-finding exercise, things like that. Well, that could be done virtually, but any way you look at it, this is a big, big achievement for Mr. Putin. Exactly, who knows very well how to play Mr. Trump, I think.
Yeah. What should we watching for, do you think, to see if this diplomatic push is genuine or just another delaying tactic by Moscow, as many sort of expect?
Yeah, great question, because a lot of Ukrainians I've been speaking to are looking for very, very clear definitions of what will be agreed to, and of course, who will be a guarantor of any agreements. I mean, the typical Russian playbook, of course, is to push for vague agreements so that they can manipulate whoever signs that piece of paper, and also to gain more territory. There's no sign whatsoever that Russia is giving up its territorial ambitions to take more of Ukraine. I think the other thing, Kim, that's important to put up here is lurking in the background, as I've written in World Briefing, is China. Minerals will most likely be on the table, whether they're minerals lying under the earth in Alaska, or more importantly for China, is the minerals in Russian-occupied territory in Ukraine. Things like neon that go into the making of semiconductor chips, things like lithium for car batteries. I think that's something that Trump feels he can trade for concessions, especially because he has a minerals deal with Ukraine, which is suitably vague as well.
Right. President Putin has a history of using diplomatic pauses to rearm and reposition. So how can negotiators structure an agreement to prevent that from happening again?
Well, I think the main thing here is verification. In other words, being able to have a team on the ground, like the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission that I was part of in 2014, 2015, to verify what exactly is going on the ground. But the main thing, I think, for the Russians is that they need to, any agreement needs to be crystal clear and with a timeline. So the typical way of, I think, of dealing with the Russians from what we know over the decades is you find something that they really, really want to get them to sign, but then you make it crystal clear to them that any violation whatsoever. And I think we found the weak spot with the Russians, and that is going after their best buddies like India, China, and Brazil with secondary sanctions. In other words, Russia, if you violate any terms of this agreement, the United States will slap very painful sanctions on these countries, and that in turn will hurt Russia. It will hurt the funding of their war machine.
There's been plenty of talks about potential territorial concessions as part of a deal. I mean, you talked about your role in OSCE monitoring. I mean, from your time sort of documenting what's happened in occupied territories, what would those concessions actually mean for the people living there? What must be going through their minds right now?
Well, Kim, it's very sad. Lots and lots of Ukrainians who have been displaced, and especially where I'm based, usually in Odessa, who have fled Kherson, Mykolaiv, say living under Russian occupation is like hell on earth. It just isn't going to happen. But then, you have a lot of elderly people there, people who can't move, who are in territories right now that are being fought over. And they're very, very fearful because there's very good documented evidence by now of what the Russians are doing to territories they've gained from stealing or exporting Ukrainian children to Russifying everything. It's very, very painful for them to leave in these sorts of conditions. So, and finally, on the way here to Rome, I stopped in Lviv and I've visited one of the cemeteries there, and you can see in front of your very eyes, Kim, the extent of the Ukrainian losses. And there's no way that Ukrainians are going to go for any major concessions regarding territory, considering how much blood has been spilled. It's just so sad. You see that all over Ukraine right now. And I think Mr. Zelensky realizes that he has to stand up for all of those men and women who have paid the ultimate cost.
Yeah, you're speaking to us from Rome right now, but usually when you and I are speaking, you're in Ukraine, so I appreciate you bringing that perspective to us. Michael Bosser-Q in Rome, thank you so much.
Thank you.